The context or the topic of discussion is cybersecurity in the changing landscape of data center and the adoption of cloud. Now, specifically around data center and cloud, so we have seen a lot of changes in the recent past. On the data center side, mostly driven out of the scalability and ease of use, as well as at the same time, now we are seeing dramatically changing requirements and people moving on to public clouds or API-driven clouds like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud and the likes, and which throws up a completely different landscape in terms of how we managed and looked at security from a data center perspective, because everything has changed or rather evolved along with the introduction of newer technologies. So I think I'll start with just to get a view or an understanding of in terms of what you feel is the current state of security in the existing environment.
While it was confined to data center, things were called perimeter security. Now we're looking at a situation where it's beyond perimeter security. So the whole thing needs to be looked more holistically, and we need to find out what are the new technologies that have come or unfolded. While security devices, tools have increased, measures to adopt have increased, also flexibility has given, what I understand is control gaps are widened, unfortunately, in the process. So it's not so easy, it's still complex. And what is missing is the processors, the back-end processors and the trained personnel you need to have, along with the increased number of tools that you buy or procure or go for a solution. So all the three don't move in tandem, in layer. And that's the challenges we have. So while we've eased some of the operational inconveniences by outsourcing it to cloud or having operations in cloud, ideally security should be better, because if it's a private cloud and an international service provider, well experienced and proven, things should improve. But on the contrary, what is happening is, what I understand from recent survey reports is, the control gaps seem to have widened simply because I think the pace of change and the need to enhance processes along with the procurement of the new technology. So these are my initial thoughts. So capabilities of detection needs to be enhanced. Certainly, I'm from risk management side, and information security reports onto me. When I want to fetch these logs from the cloud service provider, it's a humongous task. I first need to file a cyber complaint and then go persuade the cyber police to allow me to file a complaint with Interpol, and then I might get the logs. But then by then it's too late with the kind of challenges we have. So all needs to be thought through. Legal contracts need to be paid attention with the cloud service provider. The architecture needs to be well thought through. And capabilities need to be enhanced. And then you should ration. So the current psychology is that world is moving, let's move, let's cut costs, let's adapt, and the pace is not necessarily well measured in terms of risk assessments being done, in terms of capabilities being, and that's why we are seeing control gaps seem to have widened. Ideally, it should have been the other way around. Control gaps should have been lesser and security far enhanced.
Thanks, Sundar. So just starting the session. While the data center is a traditional way of storing our application or hosting application and the organization data, so the cloud is, though the term is new, however it has been used since a long time. If you think about the IBM mainframe or mid-frame computers, where there is a provision of slicing the mainframe into different virtual space and allocating space to different business units in an organizations. So it is also a type of a private cloud. So now the more buzzword is the public cloud and the invention of the software as a service, infrastructure as a service, or platform as a service, where Salesforce automation has taken a majority of space in the market, and then cloud has probably become the more buzzword in the organizations. However, the organizations are struggling with choosing the data center or cloud, looking at the various legal and regulatory aspects, and what type of data can be stored in the data center, like data center means in-house data center and the cloud. That is a decision that organization has to be take based on the risk assessment. So the primary focus is the risk assessment while taking a decision on all the aspects. First is what kind of data, whether the data is sensitive to us or data is confidential to the organizations. So if data is compromised, what would be the risk to the organizations? So these are the main factors probably everybody has to look at it.
Since they have already touched on cloud, I would like to bring or talk about the trends and realities of cloud. Uh, the trend is the IT leaders are worried about, they are worried actually, they are worried about cloud and losing control. So when we talk about losing control, I don't know why we are worrying about losing control. Uh, Cloud is taking them there, yes, but cloud is also bringing some hard-faced reality that it will be agile and scalable. Second aspect of reality is technology is evolving. If you see an individual, okay, everyone has a internet, mobile, and connectivity. So everyone is connected. The third reality is the boundaries are just vanishing. So this is the three big aspect and reality. Now, to ensure that we should lose control to gain control. That is what I feel. Cloud is going to be there and it will be the next big thing.
You can't ignore cloud. It's not important where the data is. It's more important how the data can be accessed. If you talk about the hindrance in using cloud as a technology, when the first cycle was invented, there was a hindrance. When the first car was invented, there was a hindrance. So all disruptive models will always come up with the psychological hindrances. But do you actually have a choice? Do the startup world or do the new startup culture have a choice of not adopting cloud? The best thing to live up with is to understand what the model is. I think now it's more about the consumer rather than the provider. The consumer now need to be more aware. The total spend used by these cloud providers like Microsoft and Amazon, the total money what they invest in their own technologies is much more higher than collectively few of the nations can afford. So I think the scenario is building up by the providers. It's how the consumers are going to deal with cloud. How do you have a due diligence method in place? Most of the people who are using cloud, I'm sure they don't have even a cloud security policy. It's something very, very alien these days. People not even, very recently we have heard about cybersecurity policy. So it's going to take time for us to build up cloud security policies. But I think it's now more about building a culture rather than looking about the security threats. Threats will come. The way the Intel thing happened, there was advisory that the processors, whichever are infected, needs to be changed. My question is, do we have an alternative processors? There are no availability. You have to live with the risk, right? The patches which is available in the market are slowing down the efficiency of the processes. So what are you doing about it? So this is not a new emerging risk. It's a 20 years old risk which has been discovered now. Much more vulnerabilities will be discovered and will be closed. So what the customer themselves is doing about using their own data at the time of procuring a service, I think that needs to be clearly defined. That needs to be, as Manoj also said, there has to be a clear understanding of the entire data flow from the consumer to the provider and what all security measures is there. As again Sundar said, there has to be a transparency of understanding what has been given and what has been taken. So my limited thought. Thank you.
So completely agree with all the panelists here. And just to conclude on the question, cloud is obviously imperative. We want to move towards cloud because of the simple reason that it's made life much more simple for us. Things are more accessible than it was before when cloud came in. Certain challenges that we are looking at, and I'm sure the providers are looking into solving some of them, is definitely the first one is obviously the scale, right? So what cloud has given us, it has given us the ability to scale. And the second is obviously got to do with performance as well, right? So the performance has to be good. The third is definitely ease to use. So these are the three important factors that every cloud provider looks to provide to organizations that are looking to leverage cloud, which we cannot actually shy away from. So that's just my quick thought on that.
And I think just to sum it up, I believe what the message that I am hearing is cloud is inevitable. We just have to make sure you know, before engaging in that journey, we just have to make sure that we know the risks at the right time, and we are you know, prepared to take the new risk, because businesses demand agility today. You know, you need services on your you know, on top of your palms, on your phones, on your, you know, and the entire sector or the entire economy today is driven by consumers. And, you know, security cannot go back to the business saying, hey, you know, we need more time. Infrastructure guys cannot go back to business saying, okay, I need to get servers, I need to do this, we need to do that, we need to prepare for this application to be launched. And obviously, the entire life cycle. So agility obviously is becoming it's a given today. It's not a, you know, optional thing. It's a requirement to survive. It's a requirement to sustain. And going back to some of the data points, you know, last year we have seen quite a few, you know, breaches, and if I go back, statistically, I think most of them were around some or the other level of cloud. For instance, we had Deloitte, Accenture, Verizon, Viacom, US voter data card, multiple Indian organizations, and then obviously Equifax. Now, in most of these, or I think in actually all of these situations, in all of these breaches, what has come out as a finding that either it was a human error or a configuration error, whether somebody left something open, or in case of Equifax, let's say it was an unpatched system. So in none of these cases, it was evident that this was a problem at the cloud provider itself, but it was more around how you are using the cloud. And if I have to take if I have to go back 15 years ago, when firewalls from a security perspective were a new technology or a new thing, and you would have those, you know, ACLs or those access rules configured saying, hey, allow this on this port, and towards the end you would have an IP any, you know, where you know, so I think that's probably relative to those days where, you know, we had the technology, but we were not prepared, or we were not aware or educated enough to use it in the right way. Your thoughts, guys?
One cannot be in the state of ignorance. Okay, cloud is there, and one has to embrace it. The thing is, I believe it's like Disneyland. You have gone to Disneyland. The entry is there, easy entry. You pay as you use it. The rides are enjoyable. Security is everywhere. You enter, there is security. If there are rides, they design it that way, security is inbuilt, and they launch it for the user or make them use it after it is secure. So cloud is all about this. Okay, the ride is enjoyable only to a point when there is no incident or there is no crisis. Whenever the crisis is there, the entire world will fall. So you have to be very careful when you go on cloud. It's not simple that you just lift and shift and go on the cloud. Yes, the cloud journey is very fruitful. It's there to be real, and I believe the journey will be more special whoever takes it there.
I just want to add, I think as an industry we need to mature. There is a CSI architecture which is there, but we need to come together, adapt that. Organizations need to have a kind of framework to deal with this. Framework would be architectural questions asked, the delivery of the services, the legal aspects. Because I find many times that, you know, since legal also reports to me, this is signing this is for international reputed proof. No, so what? Let me go through the clauses. And when you go through the clauses, it's so onerous. Many things are one-sided. So then say, no, we'll have to go through their legal. So go through their legal, and you have to fight out those clauses, especially responsibility, indemnity, Who will take the blame? Now, if the cloud service provider were to fail, naturally they need to bear the loss. They need to bear the risk. They need to be paying them for that. So, but if you see the clauses in the contracts, it's not there. So, there is this framework. And when I say framework, not only about security, it's all about the holistically the entire arrangement of cloud. We need to have some kind of common basic framework agreed, and that's very important. So I totally agree with my co-panelists that there is no way looking back now, of course. I mean, this is going ahead in life, and you can't go back. So cloud is going to be there. And of course, and many times I feel cloud is better than data center because the security is of some standard and proven, time tested. The only issue is then we need to iron out risks properly, ensure we do due diligence, ensure we think through everything, ensure all endpoints connected to cloud met, and you take care of the security layers, all the layered, get to a common architecture and framework. And I think that way you're better off than before. And then you will get better survey results, not like the ones that I'm having in my hand. So that's what worries me. So
I'll just want to add something on this. Almost less than 50% of the consumers who's using cloud have gone back to their providers and have asked questions like, what are you doing after the Spectre and meltdown incident? Very few people, very few corporates who are having policies in place have went back to the provider and said, what is your action plan? The rest all is assuming that something will be done. So this is what exactly I was talking about. A due diligence, your ability as a consumer to go and ask the provider. One number I want to make it clear is the number of incidents globally that happened on perimeter, on enterprise level is much more bigger, much more higher than what happens on cloud premises. So it's a myth that the cases what we get to hear about is all big cases, and not because they are simply on cloud, these incidents happens. These incidents would have happened even if they would have been in their own environment. Thank you.
So, Manoj, you want to add?
I'll just add one thing. In fact, most of the panelists are from the insurance sector, and we know what the insurance regulator has kept on the cloud computing, and we all are also part of the while drafting the guidelines. So regulator also says no, does not say no to the cloud. So as everybody are thinking cloud is going to be there. However, as the technology is growing, the threats are also increasing. And like Sundar has said, that we need to carry out the due diligence. So while carrying out the due diligence, the things need to be taken into consideration. If you are storing any sensitive personal information either for the employees or customers in cloud, whether we are building the appropriate security controls or not. So like Sundar said, okay, means probably he's thinking that cloud is better than the in-house data center. Yes, to some extent it is 100% true, because the service providers like Microsoft, Amazon and Google, all of us come into India, and they have invested lots of money, and they have built lots of controls which a single organization will, it's very difficult for a single organization to build such controls. However, all these security services are available in a cloud as a service. So it is up to the organizations to choose a service. Application firewall is available as a service, whether you take it or do not take it. If you are not taking it, then you are accepting that risk. Privilege identity management is available as a service. Application level DDoS is available as a service, whether you are taking it or not taking it. If you are not taking it, probably then we are accepting that risk. And if you are keeping any sensitive information and we are thinking that encryption is the best control, then also we need to think who is managing the keys, whether cloud service provider is managing or we are managing. So ideal situation that the organization should manage the keys. So if the keys comes into the wrong hands, then everything goes haywire. So we cannot blame the cloud service provider in those cases. And in some of the agreements also, engagements I have seen, that organizations take applications from one service provider and then that is being hosted in a cloud like Amazon or Microsoft. So that two parties come into picture. One is the application service provider, second is the cloud service provider. So when you are signing an agreement, with whom you are signing, whether there is a tri-party agreement or you are signing a different agreement. So ideally, it should be a tri-party agreement, or you must sign different agreements with both the cloud service provider. In case the application service providers does not exist tomorrow, or there is a failure in the relationship between the organization, the application service provider, where the data will be there. If you go to Microsoft, Microsoft will tell you, I don't know. I don't recognize you. So how your data will be secured there, and how you will get back your data? And the second aspect is the availability zone which is available in the clouds, which is pertinent to your business continuity. So that also need to be taken care. So if you think cloud service providers, yes, they are keeping your data backup and it is available online within 2 minutes or within 5 minutes, they will make your application available if there is a disaster. But if both the data centers are located in a same availability zone and there is a disaster, you will not get your data. So it must be ensured by the organization that the disaster recovery site is in a different availability zone of the cloud service provider. So all these things need to be considered before moving into cloud. And another legal aspect, like Sundar has been also telling, even past few months, in fact, I was talking to many legal experts and security experts on those cloud controls and what should be the clauses in the service level agreement. So there is a data sovereignty clause which many people has talked to me. So like if there is a cloud service provider is a US based organization and US government makes a request to the cloud service provider along with a gag order which is available in US. I don't know if all of you know about the gag order. Then it is the responsibility of the cloud service provider to give that data, hand over that data to the US government without informing to the organization. So they are not liable to inform you. So in case that situation arises, whether you are accepting that risk and you are accepting that risk for what kind of data. So those are the things which need to be considered to move into the cloud.
Thanks, Manoj. I think this is one of the, and I would actually request you to hold that thought because I would want to hear this from everybody. So I think two messages are pretty clear. One is that cloud is the way to go. And the second is probably they do a better job at securing than most of our organizations. So, just continuing on the thought that you initiated, how does an organization know that today I'm ready for the cloud? What are the first few bullet points or first, what are the most critical parameters or the aspects that you need to validate or ensure before you say, okay, we're ready for the cloud? I mean, for the interest of the larger audience, we would want to know how do we figure out, how do we know for sure that we are ready for the journey?
See, in fact, like if I take some cue from a last 3-4 proposals which came to me to host data into the cloud. So the business decides that we should go into cloud because the IT people takes lots of time in making our application live or making the business process enabled with IT. And some solutions are already available in the market as a software as a service. Or the application developer also will take, yes, will develop the application in just few weeks and give me a space, I'll do it. And if you go to the data center manager will give a list of rules and which includes the security controls also.
But when would be the time when you as a CISO would sign off that document saying, okay, we are ready for the cloud?
So I'll just give you a simple example. It's like when we use our phones, we click photos, right? We have two types of photos, right? One is personal photos, which we don't want the world to see, which is for a limited consumption. And one we have for the consumption for everybody, like for the Facebooks and all those things. Initial thought is when people started using cloud for saving their personal things, they started saving not their private things on the cloud, they started saving their public things on the clouds. And then they feel confident about the clouds, the password technology, the protection the cloud gives. They started moving because you also need size. Your phone goes slow, right? Why are people moving towards cloud is to be agile. The same way as we would do or what we are planning to do is, if you want to use the the best possible solution available in cloud is we are moving our non-critical data. So we are not, so you can do in piecemeal.
So you start with non-critical.
Organizations can take a decision to move piecemeal, take a comfort, understand the partner, what are the upcoming things, and then gradually it's your decision, because the best thing what clouds give you is agility, and the way the market is moving, the dynamics are changing, businesses have to be more agile in terms of taking decision, in terms of putting the technological transformation. So the best possible thing is go in piecemeal.
Coming back to your question, it's always a business decision. When? Normally business decides that we want to move to cloud for cost reasons. Efficiency and cost and operational convenience. These are the three aspects. Service delivery, of course. Integrated service delivery and time. Now, basing these factors, they decide, okay, let's go. And this vendor is saying that he has state-of-the-art infrastructure, state-of-the-art security. Now, your next question is, when does the CISO sign this off? Obviously, CISO shouldn't immediately sign it off. All this looks great. We'll have to do a risk assessment, complete. And do a security assessment also. Look at what are the red, amber, green bottlenecks. Now, normally I put, okay, these are showstoppers, you must do these. There is no nonsense out here. Amber, green, okay, you go ahead and then we'll look at controls later. So this is how typically a project is unfolded. So there are some things you could live with. And as you say, I'll plug it in later. But most importantly, you should plug things before, because then sometimes it gets too late. So business decision is what? When do the businesses decide? They look at these factors of parameters of efficiency, operational convenience, cost, strategy, aligning with strategy, etc., etc. Coming back to data, we are most of the BFSI world. I don't know whether it's restricted to BFSI, especially BFSI, telecom, highly regulated. So there is this customer data importance given to that. Like my regulator says, one copy of the customer data has to be maintained in a server in-house. It can't be out. So very clear mandate. So then you'll have to be careful. How do you do? So we also did the same. We did all the email, non-critical data to the cloud. But when you're coming back to emails, sometimes many of the very important strategic decisions are in emails. So organizations will have to align to the new reality, not write important things in emails, use applications to communicate, or decision-making systems. So you'll have to look at how you align yourself to the new reality, and then ensure those cost advantages, strategic advantages are reaped. And therefore, CISO has to be careful when he does the risk assessment. He has to be really, he is the brakes for the company, the eyes, ears of the CEO. So you'll have to say, okay, boss, look, be careful. These are the things you have. These are the problems you have. These are showstoppers. Please plug these. And these are okay, we'll live with, we'll deal with it later. So that's how it is.
Actually, I have a little different view here. I believe that we will not have time to do this, the business to decide. Actually, here the technology team should be taking that step.
Exactly.
Ahead, okay. Because they know what is cloud. Okay. Second is what can be risk out over there, and they should guide business. Okay, so that is one point which I feel. And there are two options to it. One, already people spoke about it. We have a UAT or non-critical workloads going on the cloud. And second option is you really do a readiness test. Okay, there is a process to it. You define what has to go, how it has to go. So there is a 6R methodology also. Something you will retain, something you will just phase out, something you will just lift and shift. So there is a method to all this madness. It's a complete journey. It doesn't happen in 1 minute or 1 hour. So there is a integration issues which has to be considered. There are security aspects. And as I told you, we need to, Manoj spoke about it. There is a complete due diligence which has to be done. It's before the cloud journey, during the journey, and after the journey. Before the journey, I would like to talk about two of them. One, I think Manoj has rightly spoken, but about the agreement part, very true. You have to be very careful when you go to these big players, because they will just put your hands up. Second is skill set. People try to ignore this aspect. skill set is more important. You need to know, the guy needs to design, you need to have that skill set to move to the cloud, who should guide the team and take them there. And during the transition period, they should know how to transit the complete data with integrity. And overall, later on, it's all about compliance and monitoring.
Why new age organizations are moving very fast to clouds is because big organizations have a legacy. They can't take a decision in a day. So definitely they'll have to move piecemeal. Organizations also feel that we are in the business of making value, not creating infrastructure. So this is also a new concept which the C-suite is talking about is, are we here to build infrastructure or are we here to build value? So if infrastructure is available from the best of the people, why not switch on to the infrastructure? And as said, there's a basic risk management process. You just go through the process and take decisions. So I think your question, to conclude your question, is when is the right time to move? It will depend on business to business, industry to industry. If the regulators comes heavily and if the country's governance decide that we don't have to move to cloud, even if the CISO decides you have to move to the cloud, you can't take decisions. So I think collectively as a country, as a cyber developed country, we are maturing towards this. And as the startup generation is booming, they are not even thinking or taking a call that how do I move to cloud? They're directly moving to clouds. So for them, cloud is an enabler. For companies who have legacy, they're the choice of decision.
Thank you.
Yeah. So moving to the cloud is obviously a tough decision because people are used to working in a certain way. And we don't move to the cloud just because we have to move to the cloud, right? We move to the cloud keeping the future in mind, right? Looking at aspects of the growth of the company in mind, right? If you were to replicate the infrastructure that is required currently, and you want to replicate the growth for the next 5 years, you look at the investment that will take place. Versus when you move to a cloud, the investment is much more lesser. And as the panelist correctly mentioned, it's very agile. We definitely need to do a lot of risk assessment and move it part by part just to make sure that everybody is in sync. And the transition is smooth because this is something which is not tried and tested before for that particular organization. So just to build that credibility, do it in stage-wise, have some risk management done just to ensure things are in the right place. And obviously, you would see the ROI in the next couple of years as and on when you move to the cloud. Scaling is absolutely not a problem when you're on cloud, as well as, and gradually as you grow, the ease to use also comes into the picture, right, which really helps the team to kind of have better control of, things that they're trying to accomplish.